Okay, another week, another episode of Rental House versus High Income ETFs, episode 7.2. So, getting toward the middle of May. And as a reminder, we sold most of our rental properties. And the last property we sold, we invested that money into a Robinhood account, and we've been investing in covered call ETFs. So, as a reminder, this is an experiment to see if the covered calls will produce more income than what the rental property. And my theory or my thesis was that it would. So let's take a look, see how we're doing as of this week. And if you're new, I would love it if you subscribe. Even if you're old, I'd love it if you subscribe and do all those fun things. So how we do this week? So our equity is 68,074. So I started with 70,000. So we have been down. We're creeping back up to almost be even. I am using margin. Some people have commented that I'm cheating by using margin, but I look at it as equivalent to like a home equity line of credit or financing property and perhaps building in addition so I can get more rent. So if I had rental property and I build a garage, I say, hey, renter, I'm charging an extra $300 a month because you got a nice garage. Or maybe add the bedroom or something. So that's my justification for using margin. I got 65,710 in margin. And how did we do this week with returns? giax is doing pretty well. Got 500 shares. The total average cost is $16.37. And today's price is $17.65. So I'm up. We've been adding some SPY to our portfolio, and that is up from our average cost. Then we have aipi, qdte. Those are both down quite a bit. And in a slide in a minute, I'm going to show how the recovery has been going. See the average cost versus what the price is right now. So these are creeping back, but not as quickly as I had liked, but it is what it is. This is the SPY, basically the S&P 500, and the Bollinger Band. I like to keep an eye on this to help me decide when to buy, when not to buy. So as you can see, we're on a upward trend. This is the 20-day moving average. The price is toward the top of the Bollinger Band. So I usually don't like to buy unless the price is toward the bottom of the Bollinger Band. But if it's a long-term upward trend, I probably will be adding a few more shares of SPY along the way. So a question other YouTubers have been bringing up is the recovery of covered call ETFs. So basically the negative or the downside of covered call ETFs is the recovery when the market goes down, because the upside is capped with the covered call. So if let's say the market goes down 10% and it quickly comes back up 10%, the problem with covered calls is that it doesn't recover as fast as the market in general. So that's, people say, tossing the dividends is also total return, not just the return of the price of the ETFs or stock. So if I want to compare things, I got SPY and QQQ just as to compare things to. And here are the 4 ETFs that I have: aipi, giax, qdte, and SPY. You can see that the S&P 500 is up about 5.5% since April 1st. That's about when things in general bottom out and start to turn around, come back up, and then yesterday's date. So S&P is up 5.5%. The QQQ is up almost 10%. So what I'm going to see is how our buy funds is doing compared to the indexes. AIPI is up 7.67%. So I'm happy with that. It's somewhere in the middle between SPY and QQQ. giax is up 8.53%. So if you've been watching these videos, you remember when I felt the market hit toward bottom, I added, I think, 300 shares of giax because I've been learning about giax is that it's in a better position to recover along with the indexes at the same rate, if that makes sense. It might not be capped as much as other covered call ETFs. And it looks like my guess in what I read was correct because it's up 8.53%. Still lagging behind qdte, but that's fine. But compared to the SPY or S&P 500, it's doing pretty well. So qdte, it has not recovered as well as I had hoped. So it's up 3.4%. I would have been happy if it would have matched the SPY, the S&P 500, but it did not. It's still paying a decent weekly distribution, and I got 2,700 shares, and I'll just be happy. I'm slowly creeped back up. That'd be good. It's not recovering as much as, let's say, giax. SPY I thought would have been recovering pretty close to the SPY, which it is kind of, but when you compound things over years, 1 or 2% makes a huge difference. So it's up 4%. It is what it is. I'm pretty happy. I just wish qdte would have been more, let's say, in line with the SPY, but it's not. So I have to live with that. And this is a record what I've been buying. So last time I bought, 2 weeks ago, I bought 50 shares of SPY. April 7th is when I bought the 300 shares at giax for $14.65. And it's like at 17 something now. So that was a good decision that day. Looking back, you always wish you would have did this or that. So I wish I would have bought more, but at the time that was $4,300, and I went over my self-imposed margin limit to buy those. I'm happy. And what happened last week as far as distribution? So I got a distribution from qdte up for $84. So a low distribution. Usually it ranges about 25 cents per share. And the week before it was like 30 cents per share. So last week it was like 19 cents a share, I think. So I think next week is also predicted to be about 19 to 20 cents a share. So next week should be about the same amount. But we're getting toward the middle of the month. So in a couple weeks, we'll start hitting the other distributions for the other ETFs. This is the last month. You can see the distributions for aipi, SPY, and giax were total about $900. So I did buy some more SPY, so that will bump that up a little bit. So we should end up with a pretty good month. And here's my projected spreadsheet. So over on the left is what I projected everything to be when I started on day one. I started with 70,000. I projected that I'd be sitting about 86,000 in equity right now with this much margin and this much totally invested. I guess that I would be growing my account at 0.75% per month. So for total, since last November when I started this, I would have guessed I would be up 24% so far. And the 75% represents how much margin I'm using toward equity. So 65,000 is 75% of this 86,000 approximately. And this is how it's really going. I got 68,000 equity, and I should be sad about that because I won 86,000. I'm actually quite happy because about 6 weeks ago, I was sitting at 49,000 and keeping my margin in the mid 60s. So I'm actually only a few $100 from my expected use of margin. So probably toward the end of the month, depending on what the market's doing, I'll probably add another 50 shares of SPY in here somewhere. I think that's the plan. I've been in SPY because SPY did not take a big of a downturn as the other ETFs. And that could explain why the recovery isn't quite as high, because the dip wasn't quite as low. So anyhow, that's how I'm doing. I'm up 10% for the week. So we've had 4 weeks of upward movement, And total, I'm down 2.75% since the beginning. So I've started with 70,000 at 68,000. And I'm using 97% margin toward my equity. So I want to keep that at 75% about. But I also want to stay invested heavily. So I'm using more margin than what I plan. People say, are you close to getting a margin call? No, I'm not really even close. This has to get down about 30,000 before I start getting in trouble with a margin call or anything. The 75% number is just something a self-imposed kind of rule that I came up with. And I came up with 75% because if you borrow money on commercial property, like where I'm at, they'll usually lend you 75% with no problem. So I figured, hey, that sounds like a nice number. So that's why I'm doing that. If I had that rental house still, which we sold, at the time we sold it, we were getting about $700 a month for rent. We were paying $80 a month for insurance, about $200 a month for taxes. Now, I did find out I still have some other rental properties, and the premium on the insurance has doubled. So my one property went from $800 a year to $1,300 a year. And I called and I was able to raise the deductible to $10,000 just to get it back down to $1,100. So still want a couple $100, even with the deductible being $10,000 total. So that's not good. Stackable comparison from some other agents, and they're all about the same. So that's not good. And then the property's in good shape. It's bricks, got a relatively brand new roof, like 2 years old. It's modern inside. Wiring's updated. It's in town. It's close to the fire station. So that does make a difference in your rates. So there's really no reason why it should be going through the roof. So if I had this property still, I would have guessed this $80 per month would probably be closer to 120 or more at this point. So anyhow, if I had a cash balance and no expenses besides these fixed expenses of insurance and taxes, I'd have $2,900. My equity would slowly creep up and increase by 4% per year, which comes out to be $233 per month. So the total equity and cash would be $74,571. The last slide here, front of house, $74,571. ETF is for $68,074. So as of November, the house is up $64,97. And another comment people say is if you sold the rental house, you would have closing costs and fees and commissions and those types of things. Yeah, I know that. I haven't really taken that into account. I just kind of got to compare something with something. Mainly, it's the monthly cash flow that is the important thing, and really how much things are worth total. So another question is, how long am I going to let this go? What's my long-term plan with this? When I started this, my plan was to let it go for about a year. And if it was breaking even or just going sideways, I'd probably do something different with this money. I'm not sure what, but I wasn't really planning on that. I was planning on doing better than this because I didn't expect the tariffs and the downturn and all that good stuff. I expect the stock market to do better. So the question, how long will I let this go for? I don't know, a couple of years, maybe forever. At some point, I might start taking out a little bit of money each month and investing in something else. But that's what I'm doing with SPY-I, diverting some of those dividends to SPY-I. And because I think that's probably one of the best company called ETFs that there is out there. And that's my opinion. The opinion of quite a few people. And just to repeat, I think it's one of the best, not the best. So anyhow, that wraps it up. Hope you subscribe, and I'll see you next week, and hopefully we'll be up again.